Hi everyone, now I'm going to react to Archetype greatest pictures and traits. So the name will be in the button below and how you guys enjoy. Archetype.
Hello there and welcome to the Art Attack Greatest Tips and Tricks video. I've put together some of the very best art attacks ever, all totally brilliant ideas to make and do. So let's start right away with some fantastic tips on how you can add something a little bit extra to your art attacks. Not happy. Take a look at this picture. Particularly the aeroplane. Now, what do you think? It looks to me like that aeroplane is just hanging in mid-air and not even moving. But look what happens if I put just two lightly drawn lines like that and a couple of, C shapes between the lines. You can now clearly see which direction the plane is moving in. And these two lines show the direction, and these little C shapes show the position the plane was in as it was moving along. And it sort of leaves a cartoon trail behind the plane. All right, let's have a look at this little chap here. What's his arm doing? Well, it's obvious, isn't it? He's just thrown the plane. But if I do two direction lines lightly drawn like that, you can see the direction his arm's moving in. And if I put these sort of upside down C shapes, you can see the position his arm was in when it was moving. Again, it leaves a cartoon trail behind his arm. And this is a good tip to remember next time you're drawing cartoon characters that are moving. If you want to show which direction they're moving in, draw a cartoon trail behind them with two lightly drawn lines and some letter C's. All right, check this skateboarder out. If I draw two direction lines lightly drawn like that, and then two there, you can see she's now swerving around that corner. And again, I put these little sort of C shapes in there to show the position she was in. All right then, let's draw some cartoon trails in a cartoon. Let me introduce you to Gary the golfer. Gary has just teed off for the first time in the day, and his ball has shot off in that direction. And what about his golf club? Well, if I do two curved direction lines like that, and a couple of C's in there, you can now see that his golf club is swinging round. Gary's ball flies off into the woods. So look at this. If I do the ball going in this direction, and it hits a tree, rebounds in this direction.
So here's a question for you guys.
And then it
have you ever owned this Archetype
leaving
greatest
a cartoon trail
video
going through the woods?
Now
what do you think's happening here? Well, look at this. If I do two curved direction lines like that, you can see that the ball is bouncing down the stairs. That's another good tip to remember. If you want to do bouncing, do curved direction lines. Now, while Gary is playing golf, this little busy bee is enjoying flying through the falling autumn leaves. And leaves fall in a sort of haphazard way, so I'm just going to do wiggly direction lines like that. And the bee is dodging the leaves. So again, just do wiggly direction lines. Suddenly, Gary's golf ball flies up and hits the bee smack on the nose. Just do a little explosion there, cartoon explosion, with a thump. Not very nice, is it? And the ball flies off in this direction, and unfortunately, the bee is out of control and flies off in that direction. Now, the bee starts to crash towards the earth, which is downwards. So I'll do the direction lines there, and a little C's in there. And the bee is spinning as he's going. He's so dazed. And again, if I do just curved spinning lines like that, curved direction lines, it looks like he's spinning. Now, we all know what happens when bees get angry. This one is very angry, and he decides to sting Gary. So he chases him through the woods. Look at this. Gary the golfer is leaving a cartoon trail that just winds around the trees. And there it is. Try it yourself. Next time you want to show what direction your cartoon characters are moving in, draw a trail behind them.
Did your head. Oh dear.
I'm a cheat, and I don't mind admitting it. Especially when it comes to drawing or painting things that take ages, like leaves on trees. Now here's a picture of a tree that I've
Oh,
drawn, and that was
I
the
think
easy
we've seen
bit.
this clip
Now to
before.
put on the leaves. And you know, when it comes to doing the boring bits, I don't mind cheating at all if it makes it easier and a lot more fun to do. And that's where this comes in. Any old paintbrush, preferably one with stiff bristles. And it's just a case of dipping it into some green poster paint, like that, and then just wiping off most of the paint. And the idea is to get your brush as dry as possible, so don't put any water on it. And then just hold it vertically above your picture and stab it down onto the paper. And look what happens. Look at that. Hundreds of leaves start to appear. It's a really good cheat, isn't it? It saves you drawing each leaf individually. And the more paint you put on and the more leaves you stab onto your picture, the thicker they get. Look at that. And it's also a good idea to have some dark paint. You could have some black or some dark brown, and just again wipe off the excess paint onto a piece of scrap paper and just start to dab or stipple some darker leaves around the bottom edge like this, just to give it a bit of shade around the bottom of the tree. And what about a lighter shade of paint, like a yellow or a white, and again just dab off the excess. On it goes. And just create some lighter leaves around the top, like that. And there it is. And it didn't take any time at all. Not bad for a cheat, eh? And you can use this cheating technique to do lots of different bushes and leaves. Watch this. Just stabbing it on in exactly the same way. And you know, I'm all for cheating if it makes it easier. Looks just as good. Same down here. Just a couple of bits of black around the bottom of the bushes. And also in the plants and the trellis. And if you dab on some colour, just little dabs of colour, and again, get all the excess colour off your brush first, then you can create flowers. Again, in the same way. Just dab them on, stipple them on, and on, and on. Try cheating yourself. Dab on some leaves and flowers with a dry brush.
Empty metal theatre.
Have you got a set of these watercolour paints, but does your water always end up looking like this? And your pictures end up looking like this, a complete splodgy mess. Well, believe it or not, watercolours are one of the hardest art materials to use. Many times I've ended up with a complete mess like this because it's all run out of control. Well, here's some tips on how to get good results from your watercolour paints. First of all, draw a sketch on nice, thick drawing paper. Watercolours work best on thicker paper. And when you do your sketch, just do the outlines and the shapes. You don't need to put in any detail. And when it comes to mixing your paint, just mix it with water in the lid tray of your paint box. And if you haven't got one of those, then you can always use empty yogurt cartons that you've washed out. Now, the technique to watercolour painting is just simply to brush on the paint onto the paper and keep that wash going as quickly as you possibly can. Just keep it going down your paper like this, and try not to go back on yourself. Even if you miss a bit, just keep going and you get a nice smooth wash. And you don't have to colour it in absolutely perfectly. Just control that wash all the way down to the bottom, and then stop. Stop and allow it to dry. And you know, that is the secret to good watercolour paintings. Paint each section, then stop and allow it to dry before you move on to the next bit. That way, the paint won't all run into each other and go out of control. So I'm going to put this to one side, and that's exactly what I did with this picture. I did each section, I allowed it to dry before I moved on to the next section. And look at it, it's crisp, clear, and there are no runs because I controlled the paint. So when your background is dry, then you can add on a layer of shading. And to do this, you just mix your paint slightly thicker and add in touches of black. And then just paint it on to the dried background, and look at that, no runs at all. Just another little bit there.
I've always seen this clip before.
Just to finish off some windows. And here's another good tip. It's pointless doing a watercolour painting with dirty water because you'll get all your paint a dirty grey. So use one lot of water to wash your brush with and another lot of water to paint with. And just make sure your background layers are really dry, and then you can add in some finer detail. And I'm just blotting on some shadow in the bushes here. Not too much detail, just some extra shadow there. And then just real fine detail with a thinner brush. There. And there and there. And there you have a perfectly clear and crisp picture with no runs. Of course, if you do want your paint to run, to create an effect like reflections in water, then get loads of water onto your brush. And actually, this is where dirty water comes in handy, because you just make your paper really wet with that dirty water. See that? Just a bit more in there. Get a bit of the sky reflection in as well. Make my paper really wet. And then just start to put in some darker reflections. So here we go, let's try those trees. Yes, look at that.